Welcome to the Modern Seniors Podcast, or welcome back if you've been here before. We're so glad to have you. We're building community and supporting each other and learning about all the wonderful things that we can do for each other. So this is your opportunity to send us your feedback, comments, like and support the podcast, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah. And I am Ami. Um, we are excited to have our wonderful guest, Jane Heyman. And so we normally just bring Jane into the conversation and have her tell the rest of this amazingness that she has been really created all her life. And Jane, welcome to the Modern Seniors Podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me.
All right. Well, Jane, your parents escaped to Canada during World War II.
Yeah.
How did that family history of survival shape who you are and ignite your lifelong passion for peace and creating safe heavens for others?
Well, I'm not particularly original. I think you would find if you look at any other, what we call ourselves second generation. Our parents were all Holocaust survivors, and or our grandparents, and so I think we were just instilled with the notion that, I mean, it's not even conscious, it's just, you have to make the world a better place.
Yes.
And certainly that war is not an answer to anything.
Amen to that.
Yeah. I mean, my dad, my mother and my father and my dad's younger brother got out. My mom's two oldest sisters fought in the underground in Poland and survived, but one of her other sisters was murdered in the Warsaw Ghetto.
Wow.
Both my dad's parents, my dad's older sister, and her two kids. And then, I mean, I can't even, the cousins and aunts, or for me, it would have been a great aunt. I mean, it's the numbers in my family aren't even as great as in other families of people I know where everybody was obliterated. I mean, my one grandmother survived the Warsaw Ghetto. She was smuggled out and hidden for the rest of the war. And in 1947, she came to live with us. And she was a lifelong inspiration. She people talk about forces of nature. Well, that was my grandmother. I mean, she came to Canada. She was 69 years old. She'd survived the First World War, the Depression, the Second World War. She'd lost a daughter. She'd lost sisters, a brother, and she arrived in Canada. And almost as soon as she got here, she started, raising money and collecting packages of clothing and stuff that she would send to people in Poland, to orphanages she'd sent to Israel. Everybody in our family did things. So I think my brother and I mean, we were born here. We've always had a life of, even when my parents were really struggling, we still had lots of privilege,
Mm.
So my brother and I just were, that's just what you did.
So fighting for safety
Incredible.
comes naturally to you then. Long before recent cultural reckonings, you co-chaired the task force that created the Not in Our Space anti-harassment initiative. What lessons came out of that work?
Well, I always wondered why I did that. I mean, I started doing that work in the 1990s. It was the first policy that we brought in. And then when I was on the National Council. I was an elected BC representative to the National Council of Canadian Actors Equity Association. And then in 2012, I went back again because we had a policy, but the policy basically sat on the wall. And if anybody read it, they didn't do anything about it. And harassment was still going on, primarily bullying. I mean, there is sexual harassment, but in the life where the worst kind of harassment is scapegoating and bullying.
Wow.
And, and it's a very subtle, hard thing to do. Anyway, I got back in 2012 and with groups, a lot of people in the profession, we started to tackle the question of how do we make this a policy that people will actually follow. And that out of that came the Not in Our Space project, commitment from both the theaters and the artists to say, we are going to create rehearsal spaces, performance spaces that are where people can feel safe and take where the risks that you take are artistic risks and not personal risks,
Yeah.
And, it's tough. I realized years later that one of the reasons I started doing this, I mean, it wasn't conscious at all when I started, but I was definitely bullied when I was in theater school. And I also experienced not sexual harassment, but bullying, name calling, that sort of thing. And that's got nothing to do with art for me. It's just bad behavior. So I started to work on it. And I'm very fortunate that the staff at Canadian Actors Equity was fully on board, that the Equity Council, that my colleagues were fully on board, and we're still doing the work. What we're doing now was one of the things over time, the big learning we've had, since that's what your actual question was, is that people who have been treated badly will then turn around and treat others badly unless you do something to actively break the chain, unless you teach them a different way. And
this is actually, Jane, really huge and so beneficial and impactful, your work addressing the bullying though, or harassment, because even in the workplace now, people are more conscious about this kind of behaviors. And so if I can, hearing your story now, I think every individuals in the workplace, if they would relate to or follow through what you have done in the past, they should really send you a thank you note, because you are a catalyst, a change makers for
it's not just me. I mean, with a team of people, I'm learning a lot from people younger than I mean, one of the things that we've done is we're recommending that before at the first day of rehearsal, before you've started work together, sit down and create something, a room agreement. You can call it whatever you want. Take a half an hour, take an hour, talk about how do you want to be worked with? What do you need in order to be able to do the work? And all kinds of pushback. Oh, we don't have time. We don't have time. But the point is that if you take that half hour or hour to figure out what you're going to do, if there's a disagreement, for instance, what your values are, in that half hour or hour, this group of, many of them strangers who come together to create a play, learn about each other, and you already start to build trust. So at the end of that hour, when you've arrived at something that you can believe in and that you can commit to together, you start doing the work at a much deeper place, and the work goes much further. And if you take a moment or two at the beginning of the day and a moment or two at the end of the day, just to check in to see how the ensemble is doing, frees people up to do their best work. And I think something similar ought to work in, almost any workplace. So those are the kinds of things that I've learned, that you can do simple, proactive things that break the chain of learned negative behavior. And what we're starting to do now that I'm really excited about, and what I'm most excited about, is that I was one of the people who had the idea, but I'm not the person who's driving this. It's a much younger woman than I am who's on Equity Council, who's just got a bee in her bonnet, and she's going to make this happen. We decided that the people who are in the leadership positions in the rehearsal room, the directors, the choreographers, the stage managers, needed more tools to be able to do this kind of work. I mean, to some people, it just comes naturally, but to other people, it doesn't. And they may have been trained, but mainly you get trained in the art part. You don't get trained in leadership. And honestly, very few people get trained in leadership. Look at our politicians. They learn how to run, they learn how to run for office, and they're successful at that, and they get elected. But then they get in positions of power, and they don't know what to do with it.
Oh, so true.
Two different skill sets, and we don't give our citizens the tools to be leaders. And everybody is a leader in some sphere or another, and when you know how to listen, when you know how to communicate, and when you know how to focus on the problems that you want to work on together rather than focusing on personalities,
So
But
true.
anyway, so that's what we're doing now.
Jane, I've seen the kind of conscious trust building that we're discussing in creative spheres and the arts, in my case, in session 0 for role-playing games, for example. But I haven't seen it in other contexts, and I'm intrigued that you mentioned that this could work in other places. I can see the value, and I wonder how it would play out in business, for example.
Well, I mean, I've never worked in business, so I don't know. But I mean, I know that years ago, I got asked to come and teach improvisation, or to do role playing with business leaders. And I was terrible at it because what I did was I had to teach them how to improvise, right? They know how to. So the first thing we did was do some improv games, which immediately build trust. I mean, they're fun, it's playful. They never wanted to move out of that. I never got them to do the role play because all we did was play improv games, and it brought them back to the joy of collegiality that all children have, right? If we learned more from children, it's like we think we've got all the answers because we're the older ones, blah, blah, blah. But really the children are the teachers. And I don't know whether you have kids. I have a daughter, and nobody ever told me that I was going to learn more from her than she would ever learn from me. But it was true. And, as I watched her grow up, she taught me things,
That's what I love about watching kids play, Jane, because when you observe them, there is no rules. The way that they're interacting, they don't see the colors of your skin, they don't see the statuses and education, whether this person is big or small. They play, they are included, they are invited, they have this amazing innocent way but beautiful raw way of including everyone.
I mean, they have to learn how to negotiate. There are
of course,
but really, children, for the most part, if they're not been damaged in some way, assume goodwill. As we get older, many of us lose that capacity. And I think that's at the root of so much, I'm being simplistic about it, but just a simple thing like this would be something you'd put in a room agreement, for instance. Assume goodwill. Don't assume that somebody wants to get in your way. Assume they're doing their best.
Assume goodwill.
No, what you just said actually hurt my feelings, but I don't think you meant to do that. Can we talk about this, So.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Neil, I don't know, and even our viewers, I don't know even if they know how I met Jane, but I give you a very, very, very short version of it. Back in a few months ago, I think, was it last year?
No, this is February.
February, City View Church had a storytelling night, and Jane came to tell her story, and I was so captivated. And that was the time when you and I were still, or I was still trying to figure out what podcasting is. Anyway, I was just so captivated with Jane's story, and I thought, her story is so beautiful, and I wonder if there is a way we can actually engage more and have Jane tell the rest of her life story. So she agreed to come, and so here we are. And Jane, just watching and reading a little bit more about you, Jane. Wow, the accomplishment that you have, a recognition you have received, it's, I don't know if we can actually talk more about that here, and still we don't have time to cover. And you have been you have received an Order of Canada. You have created or started the studio, and you
No. I'm sorry, I have to correct you. I taught there for 20 years.
you taught,
I was
okay.
the associate director, but a visionary 60 years ago or so named Anthony Holland started the program, and then he was followed by my dear friend and colleague Catherine Shaw, who's somebody else you should talk to. She's had a great life. She ran that program more than 35 years.
Ooh.
I was her associate for 20 of them before I decided to move on and see what else I could do in my life. But so I was really fortunate. It was and it is a splendid professional theater training program. The students are inspirational. The people who teach there are really terrific. And I mean, I was just so lucky to get the opportunity to work there. It was not a career choice. It happened. It wasn't like that was what I had set for my goal. And in fact, it's lovely to hear what you're saying, but my entire life is an accident. The big thing is that I think what I learned from my parents and from my grandmother and from all of their stories, was that if you get an opportunity, grab it. And if something isn't working out and you've done everything you can to make it work out, move on. I learned that one from my dad. Can I tell you this story?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
please.
So these are two occasions in my life, and I think this is the biggest gift that my father ever gave me. When I was 9 or 10, I think I've lost track of the exact age. My parents called a family meeting. My parents, my grandmother, who was living with us, and my brother and myself, and told us that our dad had just quit his job because there were things going on in the company that he did not like, and he tried everything he could to change them, and he hadn't been able to do it. And so we were selling the car. There wasn't going to be much money. Daddy said, "Don't worry. I can always work. He was a professional engineer, and he said, I can always work as a draftsman. I'll find another job. But until that happens, no extra money. And I don't know. I honestly don't know how long that lasted for. But I mean, he did get another job and everything, and we went back to normal. And then when I was 17, and I was finishing high school, the company my dad was working for was sold, and it was sold to a company in the United States named Bechtel, and the one person that they wanted to keep as a project manager and actually a vice president was my dad. And so we were going to move to San Francisco, which, as you can imagine, in 1961 was amazing. I mean, Vancouver was, as far as any teenager was concerned, was just, a hole in the wall. But we were going to move to this romantic, wonderful city. And our dad would go down to California for 2 weeks and work, and then he'd come up to Vancouver for 2 weeks until my brother and I had finished school. We were going to move in the summer, and I was finishing high school, so I was going to start university in the States, and I had my student visa and on. And then in the beginning of July, another family meeting, and my mom and dad tell us that our dad has decided to quit his job because he doesn't like American politics and he doesn't want to move. He doesn't want the family to move. He wants to stay in Canada. And he said the same thing. I can always be a draftsman. Don't worry. I'll find another job. But he was 50. And 50 in 1961 was old for getting hired. I, of course, was furious. I was a 17-year-old and I was all wrapped up in myself. And I didn't want to. So I had to apply. I'd missed every deadline for UBC, but I got in somehow. Anyway, he did get a job within 6 months.
Yeah.
So you have to understand, my father was a child during the First World War. He was he was a teenager during the Depression. Then he and my mom had just been married for 4 years and they had to escape from Poland, the Second World War. Most people who come through that kind of experience, if they have a job, they keep it.
Yeah.
No matter how awful it is, no matter how much they hate it, they stay there. My father taught me by example that if it isn't right, you can always get a job doing something menial. You just have to work for it. But life's too short to stay where you're not comfortable or where you don't like what's going on. And if you can't change it, move on. And that is just the most incredible gift to give a child.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. So I'm very fortunate because I've done that all my life,
Jane, in such a short time that you have shared so far, I can see, I'm very visual, so I can see the fire in your belly. And for most people, Jane, as you heard, for most people, it's a reason for them to just slow down, but you don't. Your fire keeps burning. And I think the more I hear your story, the more I'm inspired by you. And I certainly would love to follow that steps of having to continue letting that fire burn, because I see you're one of those people that is so engaging. And even if I just see your face, I'm lighting up. It's incredible. Neil, what you're dying to speak, to share.
Well, I love that you shared that story with us, and it gives some insight into where you did find the grit to lead all these changes and the courage. It was your parents' example, and in particular your father, in the story that you told. And you've mentioned grandparents and your mother, and I'm sure you also received some inspiration from them, which of course would make you want to pass that on, and give you a very strong urge to do that. So you were at Studio 58 for several legendary decades. And while you were there, you focused heavily on creating opportunities for women and mentoring young talent. So how does it feel today to see the ripple effect of the doors that you personally kicked open?
Oh, well, I mean, it's just so rewarding. It's a gift. I go to almost any theater I go to see in Vancouver. There's somebody up there that I taught either backstage or on the stage, or if I didn't teach them, somebody that I taught did teach them. It's it's wonderful. I mean, I think that one of the things that keeps me going, I mean, I'm aware of the fact that I'm 82 years old and I should be slowing down. And I actually am. I can no longer do two things at once. I used to be really good at that. I don't know that that was a particularly healthy thing, but I was good at it and I can't do it anymore. But I always got so much energy from my students.
Yeah.
And the things like I would ask, sometimes I would get my students to do things. I think, I don't think I could have done that when I was their age. So, I mean, that's another thing that maybe it's one of the things that keeps me going is that we live in a society that is so stratified, that is so siloed. I don't know whether it's always been like that, but it sure is now.
Yeah.
And I gain so much from knowing people from other cultures, from knowing young people, from having friends at all generations. I mean, I still have a few friends who are older than I am, who are total inspirations for me, women in their 90s. And both my husband had several relatives who lived to be over 100 years old, and their bodies were failing, but their minds were there.
Yeah.
And there was one wonderful woman who was a friend of my parents and my grandmother, whom I lost touch with for decades, but who reached out to me when she was in her 80s. She read about me somewhere and she sent me a note. And she lived to be 105, and she was maybe only 102. She was the first. She was a real pioneer. She was the first extension librarian for the Vancouver Public Library. And her curiosity right up to the very end of her life was incredible. I mean, her eyesight was going. She loved reading, and towards the end, she couldn't read anymore. So she started listening to audiobooks. Friends would come over and read to her. And whenever I went to visit her, she had just a roster of questions and things she wanted to know about. And I thought that's what keeps people going, and so that's what I want for my old age.
We need to keep that curiosity part of part of the best or live life kind of experience is this having that curiosity, because I agree with you, Jane, 100%.
Yeah, I think that kind of passion and engagement is the dream that we are all looking for in life, and it seems like you found it and learned how to pass it on.
I've been really fortunate. I had really good mentors. Not everybody does, but I did, and people who encouraged me, and a family that encouraged me. When I decided to go into the arts in the 1960s, first generation kid, you don't do that. You become a lawyer, you become a teacher, you become a doctor, you get a stable life. My parents just said, sure. They did say, don't you think you should get a teaching degree so you have something to fall back on? And I said, no. And that was it.
Wow.
They didn't push it. And then, of course, the irony is, what did I spend most of my life doing? Teaching, but without a degree in it. And they did the same thing with my brother. I mean, my brother ended up doing all kinds of amazing things, but he started out as a young man. He was a poet, and he started books of poetry. He published books of poetry in a poetry magazine. And then later he got involved in union work, and then he, was elected and was in government and did all these things. But they didn't stop him from doing that either. And that was also unique, that they loved us and they wanted us to be happy more than anything else. So I just
I,
want to share that with others.
that's to me, it's incredible because what I'm hearing from Jane, it's actually an ingredient for a joyful life. Because Jane, you mentioned about curiosity. It definitely you use your background in spite of the pain and other things that you have experienced, and you've used it actually to bring peace to
Mm.
other people and teach them. So there's that element of teaching and leadership. I think the next time we meet again, I'd love to hear. I'm very curious. I'd love to hear this idea of, leadership, because I think the three of us in the room, when we're talking about leadership, we know what it means,
Mhm.
but to the full extent, because there is an element of leadership that you have to embrace. And then there are things in leadership that, you know, are questionable. I would love to focus on that next time. But the extraordinary life that you have lived and you have now shared. I'm curious, when you were teaching, did you have any like famous students who became very famous, that you know of, that have still connected with you, or they have gone into this incredible life after teaching, yeah, or being in your class?
Well, it's really hard to be famous in Canada, is all I
That
can
is
say.
true. That is true.
But I mean, the first Indigenous artistic director of the Indigenous Theatre uh, at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa is a graduate of Studio 58. So he's one of the people that I taught, but so did a whole lot of other people. Um, there are a number of small theater companies that were started by our grads. My mind always goes blank with this, but I mean, honestly, if you go to any theater in Vancouver and you look at the bios of the people that are involved, you will see an enormous number of them say that they come from Studio 58. And, and another favorite student left Canada, became, first of all, the artistic director of the Dublin Fringe Theatre Festival in Dublin. Then he went to England, where he became the artistic director of the Lift Festival in London, which is the London International. Can never remember what acronyms stand for, but the Lift Festival, it's every other year, I think, and it's an international festival of, cutting edge experimental art. And then now he's in Australia, where he's the artistic director of the Australia Fringe. And this young man is 44 years old.
Wow.
So I don't think he's a household name, but he's done amazing things. And he was a complete pleasure to teach. He was challenging. There is Jonathan Young, who, together with Crystal Pite, created some wonderful theater dance pieces here, and won the Olivier Award in England for the work that they've done. Carmen Aguirre, who is an award-winning playwright and writer. I mean, the name. There's a wonderful woman named Jane Perry, who now works in England, and she won a BAFTA which were the British Award for the characters that she created in video games. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and they're all, we all continue friendships. I mean, there are a number of actors at Stratford who are from Studio 58. It's a pretty fabulous community. And what I'm really, can I just?
Yes, please.
because what I'm really excited about right now, apart from um, uh, uh, apart from the things that we've been talking about, and the leadership in practice program that we're starting at, a training program that we're starting at Actors Equity to give directors and choreographers and stage managers, etc., the tools they need. At Studio 58, where I continue to sit on the advisory committee, we've just started. We have our first pilot project, mentorship project, where we have paired everybody who graduated this year with a mentor, somebody who graduated from studio at least 5 years ago. And we had our first orientation meeting yesterday. The program
That's huge.
yeah,
Congratulations.
the program is being administered by Kenji Maeda and Michelle Cutler at the Greater Vancouver Professional Theatre Alliance. So we're incredibly lucky to have them doing, the nuts and bolts of making it happen. But watching these young people come together and hearing the mentors talk about what they want to share, and hearing what the people who just graduated hope to achieve by going through building this mentorship program, it's great. It's really, it's thrilling to watch. So I hope we managed to keep it going. Took a long time to get it started, and but it's that sort of stuff.
I'm telling you, just listening to you, I'm very excited because the reason why that this is a very important piece of work for Studio 58, Jane, because when I was actually early in my career, I worked for a nonprofit, and I actually set up exactly that mentorship where the newcomers are being paired with the seasoned and people who actually have lived here longer.
Mhm.
And the immense work is so rewarding. And on the other hand, Neil, I think you're part of that too. I recruited you, I think, in that work, and the incredible just learning and being journeying life together is tremendous because both are mentoring each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about that yesterday, actually. It's not the notion that the mentor has all the answers and the mentee
That's right.
doesn't. You both have experiences that you share. But we were so aware of the fact that the program, I mean, it's a 3-year program. It's so intense. It's
It is.
students call it boot camp, and
It
then you
is.
finish, you graduate, and it's like you fall off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're lucky, you've met somebody and you go out into work. I was incredibly fortunate. Somebody from the profession, Joy Coghill, who became my dear, dear friend, but was my mentor for most of my professional life, saw my work. I don't honestly know how it happened, but she got in touch with me before I graduated from UBC and said, I think you should come and work for me. Come and let's talk. And we talked. I graduated with a job in the professional theater in Canada, where the
That's so rare.
just getting going, and where women were not the people who did this, Vancouver was rare. Vancouver had Joy Coghill, it had Jessie Richardson, it had Yvonne Firkins, and Dorothy Davies, all strong women who took on leadership positions that women in the rest of the country barely had. And I got picked up by one of them who said, you can do this. So I've done all my life. I was so fortunate to have people along the way that I would bump into, and they'd say, sure, I can help. And so I want to keep doing that. But that's the other thing, right? With the silos, it happens less and less, like what you're talking about. Now we have to create structures for it to happen, because it's not happening organically the way it used to, or at least it feels like it isn't. I mean, maybe it's always been siloed, but it feels like in the past, life was hard, but it wasn't as pressured somehow. I mean, it was slower. So
Yes.
people were more generous, maybe. They acted on their generosity. I think people basically still are generous, but things can get in the way. So we have to help it along.
Yeah.
Jane, I just want to take a moment to say that we feel incredibly fortunate that you came here to join us today. Two amateur podcasters just starting off on our first year journey. And I just want to say to our audience, if you enjoy hearing what Jane is having to say, and if you can think of anyone else that you would like to hear, or if you have any questions for Jane, please feel free to drop us a line. We are looking for guests. We're looking for sponsors and partners, and we're building a community. This is just another step in that journey, and it's a fantastic step. Wonderful to hear these stories and these inspiring examples, and some really good questions that you're raising about what's happening today, and how does it compare to what used to be the situation in the past, and what role does luck play in all of these things that happen to us.
Yeah.
I feel like we're incredibly lucky to have you with us here today, and I want to invite our audience to join in that good fortune.
Yes,
Jump on.
absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned, Jane, about joy, and with that relationship, and this is what I love about, you mentioned actually earlier about accidental, but I think it's all pre-designed, and and all of this, you're meant to be working with joy, and consequently you and Joy and maybe other people then co-founded a very important work. It's called PAL. Tell us a little bit more about that, please, Jane.
And what does it stand for?
What does that stand for?
PAL stands for Performing Arts Lodges. The first one was built in Toronto in the 1980s. It is affordable housing for seniors in the performing arts. Oh, people with disabilities and seniors. So the first thing I have to say is it's not just an actor's home. It's a place for actors, singers, dancers, designers, podcasters, radio people, people who worked in film and television, carpenters, electricians. I mean, the theater world uses everybody. I mean, the sets have to get built, the lights have to get put up, so it's a theater is, or maybe the performing arts are a microcosm of society. But one of the realities of it in Canada, at least, is that it doesn't pay very well. And the work is, it's gig work most of the time. I mean, even if you work at Stratford, which is, the biggest company in Canada, the work is not year round. There are several months where they're not performing. So, the people that work for the company, the publicist, the artistic director, the general manager, they have a full-time job, but there are not that many theaters in Canada. I mean, there's just not that many jobs. So most of the people, they're professionals, they're highly trained, they continue to take, to study while they're working to improve their skills, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of their day, they don't have very much left to live on. So we knew, and certainly in Toronto, they knew of all sorts of very gifted, household names in Canada, which is maybe an oxymoron, that, we're now couch surfing or living in basements that they didn't, it's got nothing to do with, oh, well, you wasted your life. No, you didn't. You put your life into telling stories and bringing joy and to other people, but the remuneration is dreadful because the powers that be still think of the arts as a frill and refuse to accept the fact that the arts make life worth living, and also refuse to acknowledge that performing arts industries contribute to the GDP as much as forestry and farming and, you know, all those things that we consider our resource core industries.
Yeah.
And they are. But the arts also are a huge driver of the economy. And it's not recognized still. I mean, they pay lip service, but it's interesting, right? We get grants. They get subsidies, do they? They get investments, right? You put money into business, it's an investment. You put money into the arts, it's a grant. So what's the first thing that gets cut? The grant.
The grants.
But I mean, look what happened during the pandemic. People were at home. What did they do? They read books. They watched incredible amount of television and streaming. Theaters were shuttered for months and innovated and started to figure out ways of putting things online so that people could see. People were desperately hungry for connection, and we connected through the arts. Anyway,
well, we need to encourage, especially our government, to support and create a funding source that is meant to supporting the artists.
You bet. So anyway, that's why PAL was created, because the need was there. And once they had it, the person who was the driving force in Toronto was a man named Dan MacDonald, who actually had started his career working for Joy Coghill in Vancouver. And shortly after they got the first one going, it became really important to him to get chapters across the country. So he started bugging me about how I should make it happen in Vancouver. And I said, well, I can't right now because I've got a full-time job and I'm on Equity Council and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, but I will. So eventually I went, okay, if I'm going to do this, I have to quit Equity Council. I can't do all of it, because I also had a teenager in my life at that point. And though my husband and I shared all the work, we still have to share it. And so, I mean, there's a story about luck. So the 23rd of April of 2001, which I didn't even realize for at least 2 years, was Shakespeare's birthday. That was the date we picked to have our first community meeting, where we typed out things and stuck them up on bulletin boards and said, do you want to do this in Vancouver? And about 40 people turned up. It was cold, rainy. It was like a typical Vancouver winter day. And we brought everybody together and we said, dream of what kind of a place you want. And they did. And it's remarkable, actually, how much of it we achieved. And so they, at the end of the meeting, they elected a steering committee, and they elected Joy and me to be the co-chairs of the steering committee. So that was the beginning of it. And then we heard that, we heard that there was a social housing site, that the city of Vancouver had put out a request for proposals for social housing site in Cole Harbour. And at that point, we were a board of directors and everything else was, a couple of cardboard boxes that we moved around from place to place to place. So we thought, well, let's apply for it. We won't get it, of course, but it'll be very good practice for the next time. And then we got it. So then we had
congratulations.
Then we had to raise millions of dollars.
Yeah, of course.
But the city was a huge help. So many people helped, and so on last Monday, I was invited down to PAL to join the residents who were celebrating 20 years since the first people moved in. I mean, it makes no sense to me that 20 years has passed, 25 years since the first meeting, but 20 years people have been living there. And I mean, we lucked out in so many ways. We got a social, a housing association that helped us with all the, people whose business it was to build housing. I mean, we were just a group of artists. We knew what we wanted to achieve, but we didn't know how to do it. And they helped us. The city helped us. I mean, there's no time to list all the people who participated, but and there's this wonderful, vibrant community that lives down there. And for anybody who doesn't know, it's right across from the Bay Shore. And there's a theater on top.
What is it called? What is it called?
The theater?
Yeah.
It's the PAL Theater, the Performing Arts Lodge Theater. It's on the 8th floor of the PAL building at 581 Cardero. And there's a company called Western Gold, whose remit is to do productions that feature senior artists. They've got a lovely play down there right now. It's called, I've forgotten it. I lose nouns. It's called Saltwater Moon by David Fitch. And it runs until the end of this week. My daughter and I went to see it last night. It's lovely. Look for it. Western Gold Theater, Saltwater Moon. It's a totally delightful play. And there you are on the 8th floor with a beautiful rooftop garden and a lovely, small, intimate theater. And below you, 6 floors of housing for seniors and a daycare, which we all wanted there to be a daycare, but we had nothing to do with it. It was part of the city's plan for the social housing, is that there should also be a daycare. So there are grandparents living in the building and children on the 2nd floor. It's lovely.
I think I know exactly where this is.
Spreading? Is this something that, is this an idea that is spreading? Have other people and other communities adopted?
PAL Vancouver also just opened last year another building in New Westminster. There is now, I'm so sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone.
No worries.
I did too. I'd better get on that.
There's a PAL Stratford. There's a PAL in Edmonton, but it's not called PAL. They had to change the name because calling it a lodge in Edmonton, kind of legal ramifications.
Right.
It didn't elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think there's one in Cal. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's PAL Canada, which is the umbrella organization that all these chapters belong to, and they are supporting other places that want to think. There's a group in Nova Scotia. There's a group in Ottawa that are trying to make it happen. But there are 4 buildings across the country.
We are, Jane. We felt, I can speak for myself, I felt like we just scratched the surface, and you have so much more to share to the world. We have not even touched your life story today. You are actually taking courses and all of these amazing things. So Jane, I am just going to ask you this. We ask everybody, our guests. Jane, would you like to come back again and share? Yes, thank you so much, and share your story with us.
Who doesn't like the opportunity to talk? Huh?
I felt like, oh my word, let's get going. But I think that we wanted to certainly invite our guests again, and thanking them to you participated in this conversation, and you're probably holding on to your seat and tons of questions. And I made some notes as well. I felt like we if you are enjoying this and you have an idea on what you wanted to hear from Jane next, please share it with us. We read your comments, and I have one last question, because this is actually bring us to a close, and that is, um, inside this relentless fire in you, Jane, that we just heard and watch and experience and drink up. You've also received the Order of Canada, yet your activism hasn't really slowed down, from local housing to supporting peace in the Middle East. What is your secret to keeping that relentless fire for change alive after all these years?
Well, honestly, it's not a very happy one. I mean, I think I share that with almost all second generation Holocaust survivors. That, and I can't put words to it. My brother's the same. My brother hasn't stopped. Everybody that I know, one way or another. I mean, for some people, it's there have been crippling depressions. And again, I'm fortunate that did not. It's not that I don't get depressed, but I'm not crippled by it. I don't have clinical depression. But I think that's it. I think, we were born knowing in some deep place that we had to replace thousands of people who were needlessly murdered, and that has not changed in the world,
No.
And so I think, whatever little bit I can do. I mean, it's not huge, but I mean, look at people like Stephen Lewis. I mean, there are. I could just name endless people. His wife, Michelle Landsberg. I mean, she's barely stopped. And they're older than I. And I think that's it. I think that we can't stop because others in our family were stopped. And that sounds kind of trite, but I think that's it, because it's not anything I ever consciously think about. It's not. Nobody was more surprised than I was when I got the Order of Canada. I mean, that was like, what? You don't set out, with that as a goal. You see something that needs doing, and eventually you do it. And so, Dr. Robert Krell, who is an amazing psychiatrist who was a child survivor of the Holocaust, who has helped countless survivors and children, and me. And again, I have such privilege. I live in a country where I could get that kind of help.
Yeah.
And where the past stopped, imprisoning me and set me free instead to do things. So I think that's it. And I'm just constantly, and even more so, the older I get, the more conscious I am of how privileged I am, and therefore I have to share it.
Jane, it sounds like you are fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
And where can people find out more, and how can people support you in this?
I think, well, if you want to support PAL Vancouver, it's Performing Arts Lodges. I think it's palvancouver.org online, and they can always use help. But I think the main thing is look around your life and see what needs help. We all can see things, and I think the big deal is because people say, oh, well, you could do it because blah, 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 blah. It's not true. I'm ordinary. I just want to help. And so I start talking about what I want to do. And people join up. And then they have an idea. And then you say yes. I'll tell you something. I was one of the weird things that happened after PAL Vancouver opened was that for a few years, I started getting invitations to sit on panels of people who were talking about housing. And I would sit on this panel with people who really knew about housing, like Michael Geller and, like all these people who, Philip Bonham, who'd been our board president, who was a very well-known developer and architect. And there I was, a theater director. And what am I doing there? And people would say to me, why do you think you succeeded when other people hadn't? And the only thing I could think of saying is we would not take no for an answer.
Amen.
We knew, Joy Cockrell always used to say, we're actors. We know you have to audition 20 times to get one part.
Yeah.
And you cannot let no drive you down. And then one of the things I learned from a professional fundraiser who worked for us was that if somebody turns you down, you say, okay, do you have any other suggestions for somebody else I could talk to?
Yeah.
So you always say yes and or no and then you circle around and eventually you come back to them and you say, look, this person's helping this. Don't you want to join the club? I mean, because really all you need is a few people to get the ball rolling and then everybody wants to join on.
Yeah.
The difficulty is finding somebody to start it and to just be tenacious. And really, that's the only thing that I think I excel at. I excel at being persistent and tenacious and not taking no for an answer, which can be really irritating, but can also result in some good things.
In that context, Jane, you are the right person to lead. You are that catalyst for change. You are the leader. You are exactly what Vancouver needs to fight for and represent the artists. And you have done that. Well done, Jane. I think that's incredible. And Neil and I, the modern seniors and the community that we are building, so honored to have you and your story. We are absolutely looking for story like this. So if any of you, and Jane, if you know any people that you want to bring or even just refer to us, we are absolutely honored. Um, Neil, where do we go from here? And I honestly, I don't want to stop because I feel like the story that Jane tell us is like it's almost there, but I don't want to stop. But we know have to stop and have a part two.
I know. I'm looking at the timer and saying, "Wow, it's an hour already. How have we taken up so much time?" But it's just flown by, and I really look forward to having you back again, Jane, and possibly with another guest or by yourself again. This has been terrific. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. It was a real treat. Good luck with this.
Thank you, Jane. And for, again, we are so grateful for your time with us, Jane, your generosity. Look, here's my one piece. The fight for whatever causes that you, Jane, I, and Neil care about, it's not meant to be fought in silos.
Mm-hmm.
It means for us to come together, because if we come together and fight for that cause, it becomes lighter. But if we fight it alone, it's heavy.
Yeah.
I know, because I started a nonprofit that actually fight or address loneliness and social isolation. And thankfully, I have amazing team. And I know when I started this, I felt heavy because I was carrying it alone. And so I appreciate you, Jane, very much. I appreciate your story, your tenacity, your work for either for the homeless or housing or harassment or teaching people in the arts. Uh, you've done it all, and so honored. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Jane, so much.
Thank you so much.